All right, we're going to have a little change in the agenda. We have one addition, which is House Bill 32, which Chairman Belton will be presenting momentarily. We had House Bill 302, but it has been pulled back for some additional work prior to us having our hearing. That's the bill we started with Representative Montmahan yesterday, but he still had some work to do on that, perfecting it, and so he'll bring it back at our next subcommittee meeting next week. So right now, we're going to go on to, for a first hearing only on House Bill 399, and Chairman Clark.
All right.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I have House Bill 399, LC 43 1873. This is a bill relating to college savings accounts 529 plan. If they have a 529 plan and the recipient of that plan decides to enter the military and is served after 2 years of active duty service in any branch of the armed forces of the United States, that they can get the money in that 529 plan without penalty. They'll still pay the taxes on it like they would have to, but they wouldn't pay the penalty, the state penalty. So that's the bill.
Pretty concise background. Can you go over, there are federal and state penalties for taking it out?
My understanding, yes, is this is just to get rid of the penalties.
And this would be the penalty for the state that the state previously would have.
Yes.
In the absence of this bill, the state would charge them a penalty if they joined the military and therefore due to GI Bill or whatever.
Or they just might not want to go to school. They're going to be in the military. They could get the GI Bill if they wanted to. Now they could move it to another person without penalty, but this, if they've already got plans for their other children, this would allow them to get the money they've invested in.
And full income tax would be paid, but
Right.
just no penalty for having joined the military. All right, let's see if there's anyone on the committee or in the room have a question for the author. This is a hearing only today. It's a first hearing, so we're going to have a first hearing. We're going to have a first hearing today. We're just going to have a first hearing today. That's our target. So
she just doesn't want to have to put up with me too much.
It is, and we'll check. I don't know if anyone joined on Zoom that has a comment or further explanation or questions. See 4 mute buttons, so I guess no. All right. Well, thank you for the presentation. Nice and concise, and I appreciate it. It's a good bill. We'll look forward to dealing with it next week at our next subcommittee hearing or meeting. If Chairman Belton, could you come on up? And this is the bill we've added, and as Brian mentioned earlier, House Bill 32 should be, if you refresh your Ways and Means, right there's good. If you refresh your screen, you'll have a copy of the bill that we're if you refresh your screen on the interactive meeting agenda, you'll see House Bill 32. If you pull it up, LC 490286, that's the bill we'll be discussing, and this is a hearing only, a first hearing on the bill. All right, thank you for being here and coming with us on short notice, but please go ahead with House Bill 32.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, hang on, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This bill should look very, very familiar to you because we passed this bill completely in the House with near unanimous votes last year. It went through the Higher Ed Committee last year. This year it went through the Education Committee. Now they want me to go to this committee, and I'm happy to do so. It's a tax credit bill. I have a sheet here. It's one kind of one pager. Just a little bit of background. 1 in 4 people in Georgia right now are either being educated or yet to be educated. Teacher enrollment is down by 20% as the number of children escalates. Baby boom teachers are retiring in record numbers, so some 7,000 last few years. Class size is increasing as a lot of positions go unfilled. Over 3,000 positions went unfilled last year. And the most startling thing about this is 44% of new teachers leave the profession before completing 5 years. So what this is a tax credit. It applies only to the lowest performing and the most rural schools. And that is defined in the bill. The reason why it went to the education because it's a complicated definition, but that would be defined by the Department of Education. It's a universe of 325 schools. The Department of Education would then annually select 100 of the most needy schools. The local board of education, and then the schools would be told which schools got these selected positions. The local board of education would select what teachers they need. GOSA would monitor the progress, and the Department of Revenue would pay out. Would it be the $3,000 a year for 5 years max, which means a total of $15,000 per teacher. It would require a 5-year commitment to that eligible school. It's a first come, first served basis, and it's a pilot program. So it's 1,000 teachers maximum can use this program, which means it costs a maximum of $3 million a year. There are 46 states have some sort of tax credit program like this. In 70%, now there's 43 different studies that I've looked at. And 70% of the time, these did help teachers go to these needy schools. It helps especially minority schools. 90% of the time, when these schools do this, the teachers stay for more than 5 years, which is a lot better than 44% what we're looking at right now. This is not my idea. This idea was from Chairman Amy Carter. She led an education reform commission back in 2016 with Governor Deal. She had 70 teachers who worked on this. And when the number two issue was loan forgiveness. This is an education document, but it's the Georgia Partnership for Excellence in Education. And then one of their top priorities of their top 10 is the teacher pipeline. So what we're trying to do is have a laser focused pinpoint addressing these needs in the most needy of these schools. And that is essentially the bill. I can talk to you about the different states if you like. Like I said, 46 states do something like this. Arkansas spends about $3,000 a year. Arizona spends $7,000 a year. Delaware spends $2,000 a year. Illinois does about $5,000. Iowa does $4,000. California does $20,000, which is pretty great. North Carolina about $6,500. I can go on, but this is not a novel idea. This is an idea that many different states do. And again, it's mostly for the rural schools, but also for the bottom 5% performing schools. And I stand for questions, sir.
Thank you for your presentation. So this is a tax credit or?
The tax credit. The
So-
last line you want to look at is line, and I'm sorry, that's the wrong piece of paper here. Yes, it's a tax credit for 5 years in line 156, 157. Most of the bill talks about accountability, how this is how the Department of Education, Department for Revenue, GOSA works together to make sure this is correct, as well as the local board of educations.
So the beauty of a tax credit is that it is not taxable income for federal tax purposes to the teacher.
Yes, sir.
But it doesn't cost the state any more or less than if we had given them $3,000, say in a pay raise, they would have owed federal taxes on that. But by doing this directly as a tax credit.
And initially I went for a loan forgiveness, but because of the leadership, this is what we came up with. The other thing I didn't mention, I should have done, I'm sorry, is this. I've gone through 12 drafts of this bill. It's a complicated bill. It was a bipartisan bill. The people who worked on it, Representative Marcus Wiedauer, Jasmine Clark, Angelica Koshow, Chairman Chuck Martin put a lot of effort into it, Darlene Taylor, Gerald Green. So there's a lot of different voices where we're looking at this. And again, it passed the House by near unanimous vote last year. You can imagine the guy who voted no on this, So it's a very bipartisan measure. It's been fully vetted. Department, I know Page likes it. Department of Education loves it. I've got a letter from the Chamber of Commerce that they like it as well. And I know I'm always talking about military, but and I'll say this one more time, is most of our military bases are located near very rural schools. Moody, example, Marine Corps Albany, Stewart, and the military's number one thing they're looking at of whether or not they're going to move bases and people and personnel and money in and out of these bases is K-12 education. That's their number one. Believe it or not, it's hard to believe the military, but that's what they're saying. K-12 education is their number one priority for where they're going to put their money and their efforts. So this is a military bill.
I did notice that you had mentioned it had been a loan forgiveness, which of course would select for solving the second thing you listed, which is grow and recruit new talent. The person most likely to have a loan is someone recently graduated, but I guess by changing it to a tax credit, is it lines 40 and 41 that discuss recently hired? Is that the way you try to direct it toward?
So
new
what we decided
teachers?
is it was going to be recently hired. What we decided was it's going to be recently hired or any teacher who chooses to move to that school. So
An
it could be
at-risk school,
an
right.
experienced teacher or a new teacher that moves to that school. And as long as they went to that school for 5 years, they keep receiving that credit for the 5 years.
Last question for me. Is there somewhere in there that says what happens if they leave after 3?
Then
There's no
they cut off the
recoupment
program.
of the 2. It's just, or the 3 years they've gotten. There is no recoupment of the
They,
tax
they don't
credit.
recoup the money, no, but they don't get any more, obviously. And that is the lines 122, the 130.
What committee members,
And one other
Chairman
thing,
Houston?
and if the tax credit exceeds more than their tax liability, they do get refunded the amount for that up to $3,000.
Yes, ma'am.
So I think that's really important that they get refunded up to the $3,000.
Yes,
The
ma'am.
Tax credit. doesn't
I
come.
will say that I've done a lot of bills, but I've got more good press on this bill than any other bill. And because of the loan forgiveness aspect of it, but we ended up deciding on the tax credit. I still think it's a good bill because of that.
Any other questions from the committee or anyone who's on Zoom from either DOR or anyone? All right, this is a hearing only, so I appreciate your presentation and the questions. We will.
Thank you. I think I might have someone to speak to the bill
Oh,
as well.
Sure, we'll do one more today, and then we'll start enforcing our other guidelines for Zoom only presentations from the public. But thank you for just
Thank you.
reintroduce
Thank you,
yourself.
Mr. Chair. I'm Margaret Ciccarelli from the Professional Association of Georgia Educators. Many of you may know me from the last hearing. But on behalf of most educators in the state, we do have a teacher recruitment and retention problem, but it's very area specific and subject specific. And this bill gives us the capability to target areas where we need that help the most. We also like very much that through the tax credit, as the chair has identified, we give veteran teachers who are new to these schools that qualify under this bill a chance to receive the tax credit as well. I think it aligns well with the governor's teacher pipeline package that's moving through the General Assembly. And we appreciate Representative Belton's hard work on this. He has really pushed hard over many years to get this done. And we teachers appreciate his hard work on their behalf.
Maybe you'll know this if you don't mind. The teachers that are selected, and I see that can be up to 1,000.
Up to 100.
Oh, I'm sorry. 100 schools, but 1,000 participating. Is that correct, Chairman? Okay, so it is up to 1,000. And who is somebody picks the 100 most needy schools, right?
DOE will do that under the bill.
Right, Department of Education. And you mentioned something in particular, hard to fill subjects even. Might they have a prioritization list of their hardest to fill?
My understanding, and I don't want to speak, I don't want to step on the author's toes, is that this will be done based on the lowest 5% of performing schools in the state. So that could be any school throughout the state in urban or rural. And then there will be rural schools that are eligible as well. So DOE will annually determine eligibility. And that will, I think, allow some targeting of needs in those schools.
Chairman?
That's correct. So it's very rural schools, not just any rural schools. So the very rural school means they have to be away from a population center. So there's about 188 of those schools, plus the lowest 5% performance schools, which are in, some are rural, some are urban. And that comes up with a total of 325 schools. Then the Department of Education will narrow it down to 100 schools, and then they'll give out those 1,000 positions. As they see fit. And obviously, they're going to be prioritizing in special need areas. But we did not want to tie their hands of exactly who, because if you start tying hands, then you might be able to get the positions filled at all.
Thank
Yes, ma'am.
you. Chairman Houston.
In line 44 of the bill, it defines rural territory. If you see it, it's got to be within more than 5 miles from a urban area in 44.
Yes, ma'am. And that's a federal
Federal.
designation.
Uh-huh.
All right. Well, thank you for being here.
Thank you,
And
Mr.
Chairman, it looks like there's no other questions. Thank you for your presentation, and we're adjourned. Thank you for being on Zoom.